So, who is this here in this portrait?
So we think that in this portrait, this is Edward's tutor, a man called John Haggius. And this portrait is a pendant to Edward's portrait, meaning that they're intended to be hung together. And if this really is John Haggius, this is incredibly unusual for pendant portraits. They were usually reserved for family or couples. They really represent a close relationship between the two sitters. So I don't think there's another example where it is a student and teacher in this style.
So you say that Edward and his tutor John were very close. How do we know they were so close?
So we know that they were close from the letters that they were both sending home, and both Edward and John were writing back to Isabella, Edward's mother, and the trustees. They write in a way which is very complimentary of one another. John repeatedly sort of praises Edward's academic skills and his sort of manners as a gentleman and his behaviour abroad, whereas Edward defends his tutor when the family start to sort of turn against him and they start to become a bit more critical of him. And Edward is always there to sort of defend his actions and his honour.
So it seems that not everyone was so approving of John and Edward's relationship.
No, so despite the fact that John Haggius was hired on a recommendation from somebody who was very close to Edward's father, and it was the trustees themselves who approved his appointment, later on throughout the Grand Tour, it seems that the trustees began to disapprove of Edward's tutor. And they don't specify exactly what it is that sort of causes their opinion to change, but there is reference in one of the letters that he does something that is so terrible that they can't actually specify it in writing. But when Edward gets involved in a duel, that becomes the perfect excuse to finally get rid of him. So after that, they decide to fire John Haggius, but Edward isn't too happy about that decision.
So after the Grand Tour, did Edward and John stay friends?
So when Edward eventually returned to Temple Newsam, John Haggius didn't come with him, though he was involved in helping ship over Edward's many purchases back to his home. Once they said their goodbyes abroad, it seems that they didn't meet again, and actually the family were involved in sort of preventing this, because at one point shortly after his return, Edward did want to go down to London, but they were worried that that was a point where they might reunite, and so the family were actively involved in making sure that they didn't come into contact again.